The most thrilling, spine-tingling series ever.
From the pages of R.L. Stine's best-selling books,
And the screams go on forever and ever.
We now return to Goosebumps.
Greetings, Goosebumps fans, young and old, big and small, living dead and undead. Welcome back to the Goosebumps Crew Podcast. As always, I am your host, Isaiah Vargas, and I'm joined by my good buddies Bjorn Palnick and Nick Shaw. We are the Goosebumps Crew, and we're back, as always, to talk some Goosebumps. If this is your first time joining us here on the Goosebumps Crew Podcast, I want to sincerely welcome you all. If you are or have ever been a fan of the popular Goosebumps series of books or the monster franchise that they spawned, I have a feeling this podcast is going to be right up your alley. As I always say, me, Bjorn, and Nick, some of the biggest Goosebumps nerds on the entire planet. We could talk about Goosebumps for hours on end, and that is exactly what we do here on this podcast. Every week, we got a brand new episode talking about everything Goosebumps, whether it be the books, TV shows, movies, video games, merchandise, whatever it is. If it has Goosebumps in the name, we're going to talk about it so much that you are going to be sick of hearing about Goosebumps by the time you're done hearing us talk about it. So with all of that said, if you end up liking today's episode, make sure you have a like and comment. If you're watching us on YouTube, subscribe to the Goosebumps Crew YouTube channel. Hit that bell notification to get updates when new episodes go up every Wednesday at noon Central, 1 p.m. Eastern. But if you're just dying to get those episodes early, you can catch them over on our audio platforms. We're available on platforms such as Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, or wherever you get your podcasts. Those episodes go up every Tuesdays at noon Central, 1 p.m. Eastern. And of course, you can follow the Goosebumps Crew over on social media. We're available on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and Facebook. You can also follow Bjorn and Nick at Goosebumps Aussie Fan and Shawn, respectively, on their social medias and their YouTubes. All those links are in the description below, so check them out. Join the Goosebumps Crew today. Become a crew member. We thank you in advance for your support. Now, for those who are frequent listeners here on the podcast, you'll know that we have talked to, so far, 2 Goosebumps cover artists, that being, of course, Mr. Tim Jacobus, who did the original 62, Series 2000, some of the more iconic ones. We also talked to Craig White, who did the back half of the series Give Yourself Goosebumps, and now today we can officially say that we've had 3 Goosebumps cover artists on. So we are once again revisiting the Choose Your Own Adventure style Goosebumps series, Give Yourself Goosebumps, and we are covering, we talked to the person who did the back half. Now we got to talk about the front half. So joining us today to talk about his work on Give Yourself Goosebumps and the Goosebumps franchise as a whole is professional artist and illustrator and owner of the Max Toy Company, Mr. Mark Nagata. Mark, thank you so much for joining us. How you doing today?
Thank you for the invite.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're very happy to have you. We're always interested in hearing about all the wonderful Goosebumps art. I mean, we always say that the Goosebumps art is just phenomenal. We did an entire top 10 list on our favorite covers, and some of yours made that list, I will say. So
cool.
We're very, very excited to get a chance to talk with you. But I guess, as always, to start out, you've done more than just Goosebumps. As I said, you're a professional artist and illustrator, and you own a toy company. You got to make kaiju figures and all the sorts. So you've had a pretty long career. Can you tell us a little bit about how you got started?
Oh boy, that's that's a difficult one. So I guess, well, to start from the beginning, I always loved to draw, and ever since I was about 3 years old, I've been drawing superheroes and monsters, and my mother even saved, like little drawings I did back in those days. And then you flash forward to just after high school, it was suggested by one of my art teachers, like, hey, you should go to like a real art school, and if you want to become a professional artist, then, I think maybe that's a good direction for you. And it took me a few years. I kind of went longer than usual because in the meantime I was working part-time just to save money. And then the art school I went to, Academy of Art, it was called college back then in San Francisco. It was fairly expensive. So I could only take like maybe, not quite full time. It was like maybe half-time courses, and it took me a few years to get through that. But while I was in art school, I realized that what I wanted to do was commercial art. And so when I say commercial art, I mean like literally like beer cans flying in space, soda cans, whatever, with monsters and all over them and stuff. Just, I mean, basically stuff that you'd see in the grocery stores and things like that. And my teachers didn't like that type of art, even though that's where you made your money. Like they wanted this kids to be more sort of fine artists and, do like a nice kind of, I don't know, sort of like a, more like an impressionist kind of, style of painting. And that really wasn't for me. So at that point, I put my portfolio together, and then a fellow art student and I went to New York because we knew you had to get like an art agent to get you jobs if you weren't living in New York. I mean, we were living in San Francisco, so of course we'd have to fly there. So we flew there. We were showing our portfolios around, and this is kind of a interesting aside because one of the reps we saw, and I can't remember the name of the rep, but they actually showed us early Tim Jacobus work. And they were like, oh, your portfolios are just so, but, here are some of the people we represent. And I swear to God, it was like one of the paintings I know was a Tim Jacobus because I saw his name on it. It said Jacobus, right? This is before Goosebumps, okay? So, it's like foreshadowing what's going to come. And anyways, on the final day we were there, luckily we were able to pick up an art agent who was willing, to take our portfolios around, get us work from, ad agencies and design firms. And of course they take a cut, which is fine. But we came back to the West Coast and, we just started freelancing as best as we could. And, maybe the first year was a little slow, but then gradually as my portfolio was circulating the East Coast, started getting more work in, and that was sort of the beginning of my illustration career. And again, pre-Photoshop, pre-email, I don't know, like sometimes I try to describe it, it sounds like the Stone Age, Yeah. But, like when I'd finish a job, a painting, I'd have to FedEx the actual painting all the way to the East Coast, and it actually would get there, and if everything went fine, then the client loved it, then that's the end of the project, right? I get paid and whatever. But if there was any corrections on the painting, they'd have to send it back to me, right? And so they'd go all the way from New York back to San Francisco, overnight it. Next day, I'd, get up and the FedEx guy would, deliver the painting to me. I'd have to like make some changes. Then I'd have to pack it back up and I'd have to send it back to New York again. So it was just like, I mean, that's all I was used to. But of course, now when I think of in these days, you could just scan it or you could create it digitally and, no problem, right? You just email it or upload it. And
but where's the heart?
True. Well, so yeah, we can get into that. And also the fact that, this is kind of jumping ahead, but now 30 years after the fact of doing the Give Yourself Goosebump covers, I mean, I literally have all the paintings. I've only sold one. So I have all the physical paintings for all the book covers. And luckily my agent was savvy enough to get back every single painting for me. They didn't disappear in the ether or whatever. So for that point alone, I'm just, thankful that I was doing like physical media, if that makes any sense. Mm-hmm. So anyways, so basically I was doing that for probably 5 or 6 years. And then my agent got me on the phone and said, hey, like I was in Scholastic and, I was kind of overhearing a conversation, about Goosebumps and, he knew that that Tim, of course, was their main artist, the artist, which, was great. But he said, I think I see an opening for you. He goes, I hear they're going to do the spin-off book, Give Yourself Goosebumps. And for whatever reason, which, I don't know, maybe you can ask Tim about this, because I don't know anything about why he only did the first cover. But then from the second cover, right, is when I started. Mm-hmm. And I actually had to do a little tryout piece for that. Because in my portfolio, like I was telling you, I had soda cans flying in space and, just very slick kind of commercial things. So I wasn't really showing anything that was more fantasy or horror like. But I was, I told my agent, said, like, give me 2 days, let me whip something up, and, I'll FedEx the piece to you and, bring it in and, let's see if it's something that they think, they can try me on. And, let me see if I can, I think I have it right here, the tryout piece. So it's not, the difficult thing is they didn't really, at least when they first approached me, they didn't want me just to be a copy of Tim. They were like, well, we needed sort of bright colors and kind of creepy, but we're sort of looking in maybe a possible sort of different direction on it. And I was like, oh, okay, I don't know what that means, but I'll try to create something, right? So let's see. I don't know if you'll be able to see this, but this is the initial...
Ooh, I like that
image that I came up with, which is like a little skeleton guy playing
basketball.
I love that.
Yep, in a graveyard.
Why is that not on a Goosebump book cover?
Well, okay, so it was good enough to sort of get me the gig, but I think they felt it was too slick. They wanted something for lack of better words, kind of a little more painterly, like Tim's stuff has a little more kind of texture going into the brush strokes and stuff, less sort of slick airbrush. And so that was sort of my, how do I say, sort of the thing they, my criticism on, or their criticism on the piece was like, okay, we're going to give you this first, book, but try to make it a little less slick. I guess that was the main thing. And so that was, the first one was it TikTok You're Dead?
Mm-hmm.
And,
yep.
So real quick, I guess I'll just show you guys. So again, the way they would give me sort of the synopsis is they would fax me a short copy of like what this book's going to be about. And so I think this is something I might have sent you guys, but it's just a bunch of text that just says like, you and your little brother Danny and their parents, they're going to New York City for vacation and blah blah blah. Then you open up this and blah blah blah, and you get scared and so it's just kind of a general overview, but they definitely wanted like a giant clock face on the front, and then the kid like hanging off one of the arms of the clock, and that was it. I mean, basically just go from there. I could not find the sketches I did, but I do know they required 3 versions, and then from those 3, they would either pick one of the 3, or they would pick one and say, oh, can you like, we like this one, but can you just like do a variation or whatever on it?
Yep.
And so see if I can, sorry for looking down here. So the sketch that they did pick was this one.
Mm-hmm.
Where, they're pretty crude. I mean, it's just sort of, and it was a square format. That was the other thing that I had to adhere to in terms of dimensions and stuff. Yep. And so little kid hanging off the clock. And so at the time I made a like a little clay sculpture
Whoa,
as a guide for the clock.
that's cool.
So
That's awesome.
That's awesome.
just
Evil
so
Cogsworth.
I can tell, like, like where the light would hit it, right? If it's being lit from below. And then they also gave me a budget for the kid. Okay, originally I was just going to sort of make up the kid hanging off the clock, but my agent was like, "Oh, I think you better like hire a model." So I've covered up the kid's contact and stuff because I'm sure he's an old guy now. But this is the kid they picked. Just a generic, kid from some agency. And then we did a photo shoot where he's like, got his arms up, like pretending he's hanging off the one of the arms of the clock. And then from there, once I had the sketch approved and then the kid hanging off, and in terms of colors, they were just saying, make it bright like Goosebumps, Tim Jacobus colors.
Yeah.
And then that was, let's see if I can find it. Oops. Yeah. So then here's the final.
So cool.
Man,
Cover.
I love that.
Man, I would have been so tempted to do a variation where the kid's like hanging half out of the mouth or something.
Right. Well, I mean, I can show you guys some other book cover sketches. I feel like they didn't always pick the one I wanted them to pick, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Right.
It's always the worst one that I would come up with because, usually the A is usually my vision for it. B is like, well, that's okay. And then C is always like, I have no idea. I'm just going to, throw something in there because they want 3 examples. And they always went with C. So that was always kind of frustrating, from an artistic standpoint. I was kind of like, I don't know. It's you guys are always kind of picking the one I don't like, but it's okay. You're paying for it.
It's always funny though because in recent years, a lot of the sketch of the original Goosebumps covers has come up mostly from, from Tim Jacobus' side.
Yeah.
So you get to see those different variations on like what could have been done. Nowadays, all the Goosebumps covers are iconic in their own way. Like everybody knows them, especially, hardcore Goosebumps fans like us. We know them. But it's always interesting to just see like what it also could have looked like. And sometimes it's like, oh yeah, they went with the best one. To sometimes it's like, I feel like that one actually might have been a little better.
Right. And it's very individualistic, right? I mean, you may prefer something that's just like a scene, like say Cheese and Die or something, just like, oh, they're just barbecuing. Whereas maybe an alternate version is more in your face, like the hot dog's like right in front of you and, it's like much more weirded out. So yeah, I could never really, what's the word? I guess I could never really predict which way they were going to go. Like sometimes I'd look at my 3 sketches and go like, oh yeah, okay, they're going to go with the safe one. And then sometimes they'd surprise me. It's like, like, oh, really? Like, you're going with that one with the skull exposed and,
Well, I'm very glad you brought that one up. This is one that I personally love is Escape from Camp Run for Your Life. Now, actually, before I get into the art, I just got to say, because we didn't really get to talk about this before on the podcast, but I love these holographic covers on these books. It's actually, you know what? I feel like we might have done it, but like, I think it was you, Nick, that brought up that this is like so 90s and the holographic design of these particular books. And I think it complements the art very well. It just, there's something about the color scheme of the cover with all the flashy holographic and then the art right in the middle. But yeah, the one you were mentioning was this one, and this one is, I can't believe they went with this one because there's worms coming out of the holes in the head, and then you got not only the skull exposed, but the brain, like the brain's exposed too.
This one's just terrifying. Like it freaked me out. This is one of the few covers because we did a top 10 video. And this was in like right up there for me, and this is one of the few that truly terrified me when I would look at it. I love it so much. I love the background colors as well, like the
Oh yeah, the colors, like just the use of purple and orange, like the orange of the campfire and then the purple night sky with the moon is like such good accenting colors to the blue and the green and the yellow of the corpses right up in front.
Yeah, I don't know how he did it.
You just make magic happen.
I think it was whatever color was sitting on my table.
Do you remember which one which which was the painting you sold? Which one?
The peanut butter one.
The peanut butter. Oh,
Yeah.
you still have this one? Oh man,
yes.
that's so cool.
I do, yeah, yep, that one. That's the only one I've sold to this point.
Beware the Purple
Wow.
Peanut Butter, I've said it before, is one of the first Goosebumps books ever, of any series that I ever saw. And as a wee kid, you know, this was, it was so weird, and actually it kind of freaked me out, because it's like, oh, why is he in a big sandwich? Like, what sense does that make? But I love it. This is one of my absolute favorite Goosebumps covers of all time. I just love how
God.
silly and goofy it is, while also, like, obviously a terrifying situation. Nobody wants to end up in a sandwich.
Yeah, I've got to dig up those sketches. There were it started off where they did not want a face. So it was just like a baseball cap kind of peeking out and just giving you the sense of like, oh, there's a kid or somebody in there. And then of course the legs popping out, and then it sort of devolved into like, oh no, we got to show his face and blah blah blah. I mean, just like I used to get stuck in these kind of, I mean, it's I'm doing what they're asking me to do, if that makes sense. So I would just sit there and read these faxes or talk on the phone with my agent, and he go, well, we're not sure, they want to do this, we're doing that, and I'm like, okay, you guys just tell me what to do and I'll do it.
Like this was during peak Goosebumps time too, so they would have been like really, trying to get these books out, because like Nick was saying, there was just like a new book like every week.
Yeah.
So it would've been just
So when we started going, it was like a 2-week turnaround. So from beginning to me delivering the painting to them. And in terms of me being able to actually paint on the painting, it's like 4 days maybe. Because, you have to factor in the FedExing back and forth. If there's any changes, and it's like, that's got to be squeezed in there. So I was turning them out like, yeah.
And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if maybe, the position opened up, because Tim Jacobus, like, this was the first Give Yourself Goosebumps came out in 1995, so they were still in the middle of the original series.
I was gonna say,
yeah,
yep,
like,
yep. Oh no, he was deep into it.
yeah, I was gonna say he was doing that, and then obviously, like by the time all this was going, then he had Series 2000 as well. So, I mean, they kept him going, but then obviously, they had this other side series going. I would be surprised, given what we've heard about their deadlines, for especially during that time, because again, like you said, you had to ship these. These weren't something that would be, a scan or here's a quick pic and I'll text it to you. Here, tell me what you want changed. So it was very I don't know, hectic, I guess is the best word to use.
Well, you guys are young guys. A word of advice, and that's to, definitely you got to pace yourself. I mean, I would say at the end of my run with Goosebumps, which kind of also dovetailed to computers and Photoshop coming in, which we can talk a little bit about, which is when Craig came in. And no offense to Craig. I just, I love his work too. But, I mean, I was so burnt out just of illustration in general that, I literally had like an ulcer developing, and I had to just like step away from it. And oh, looks like we got a we got a frozen screen here.
Oh, we do?
Oh, okay, there you go. Oh, maybe it might be on my end. Sorry about that.
No, all good.
That's all right.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it was a good run, and I mean, another thing I guess maybe people don't realize too is I was doing other work other than Goosebumps. So I was also doing, like you said, Graveyard School. I did some Spine Tingler covers, and locally, like, okay, this is all back east, but on the West Coast where I'm based, I was doing advertising work. So I was still doing product illustration and work for designers. So yeah, it was nuts. I mean, Goosebumps was great, but it was like one project in a given month where I'm filled with like 5 or 6 other projects of varying degrees. Some I could cut, bust out faster. Some took a little longer, but yeah, I mean, I was like 30, so it's like I could not do that now.
Mm-hmm.
I think I saw somebody maybe put a comment or something like, oh, Mark should do, like a new version of this cover or whatever. And that would be great, but I don't even think I have the energy anymore for some of that stuff.
Yeah,
I don't blame you.
I mean, we talk about with with Tim and Craig, and I'll ask you the same question, of course, because I'm always curious, like, of the stuff, if they did ask you to come back and, like, say, redo a cover, like, not to make it exact, but do how you want to do with this. I think Tim said he would like to go back to Terror and Tower and kind of revisit some of the back piece of that, and a couple other things. And I can't remember if Craig said his or not, but was there something like that? I mean, I think maybe we'd be very interested in, because we always thought it'd be really cool if they did like a anniversary edition of a book, but made it updated with new art by the artist who originally did it.
Right. Offhand, I don't think I have any particular cover that, maybe I look at and think, oh, I maybe could have done it a different way. I feel like for that phase of my art career that I think I did as well as I could do, considering the time constraints and my skill level at that point and my energy level. So to be honest, I mean, I think I would be less, that would intrigue me less than if they just said, could you create a new image? I think I would be more excited about doing something new.
Yeah, definitely.
So new Goosebumps book.
I do want to ask, so you had said that, when you got the job, they were like, we want somebody who's not just another, Tim Jacobus, stand out. But in creating your art, did you take any inspiration from him, or even have a chance to sort of like collaborate and get some pointers?
I've never met or talked to Tim or Craig.
Wow.
So I feel like, yeah, I'm just sort of, and maybe it's just because I'm out here in the West Coast or whatever. And all the job was being filtered through my agent. So I wouldn't really talk to the art directors directly either, because that's what I was paying my agent to do, was to deliver the art and, whatever, give me feedback or, on the things. And, I think the main thing was just like the kind of whacked out, the sort of backgrounds that are all kind of, blown out, like a wide angle kind of lens look. They always liked me to do that. And that's obviously directly from Tim's covers. Now in terms of like coloring, my style tends to be much more colorful anyways. So I think if anything, Tim and I would be similar on that level in terms of bright colors. But just in general, I mean, I think they wanted all the, obviously all the covers to pop. But getting back to the campfire
stand
talk,
out, yeah.
But yeah, I couldn't believe that they wanted the flayed skin and the and the skeleton. I was just like, are you guys like really? Like, I mean, I didn't mind doing it, but I was just kind of like kept thinking they're gonna want me to repaint this over, right? It's like as soon as they get the painting, they're gonna look at that, that arm and then the flesh peeled over. It's like they're gonna go like, yeah, that's too much. We can't go there.
I mean, when they got later into Goosebumps, they were starting to take more risk with the art, especially when they got to Series 2000. The art started getting a little more grotesque, a little more obviously not, so gruesome that it's inappropriate for kids, but
right.
They were leaning more into the sort of like gross nature of things. So I don't know, maybe it was just kind of like, you know what? Let's go for it. Like, why not?
They were taking more risks. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, make it more edgy.
And also, piggybacking off that question about Tim. So Tim's art had a lot of his own personal inserts that he liked to do. He liked to do checkerboard floors. He liked to add Converse sneakers. Was there ever anything in your art that you wanted to add that was particularly your own sort of style? Or was it pretty straightforward overall?
It's pretty much straightforward. I would try to hide like a little skull somewhere. So if it was like in the wood grain or sort of like hidden in the background. I was able, yes. Sometimes even more subtle than that, but more so on the Graveyard School. They gave me pretty much free reign on those covers. So I guess maybe if you ask me like for the Give Yourself Goosebumps, I had to sort of stay in sort of a lane that didn't deviate too far from sort of Tim's look, if that makes sense. They knew I wasn't Tim, but they also didn't want it to look so out of the way that, kids, would think like, well, what the heck is this? It's like, it doesn't fit in with Goosebumps. But for Graveyard School, I feel like that's sort of my more natural style. With those covers. And then also like I was saying, they gave me much more free reign in terms of what I could do with it.
The Graveyard School,
because I feel like after we've talked to like Tim and Craig, I think both of them said too at some point that they kind of got free reign with their covers. Tim especially with Series 2000. They let him do that extra grotesque stuff, and because they were trying to appeal now to the Goosebumps kids who were growing up with the books, hitting that next stage, So I kind of feel like if they could have stuck it out a little bit longer. I mean, I love Craig's stuff too. Don't get me wrong, but it was weird that they kind of cut the artwork almost in half of the books, where the front half obviously was your style, and then they jumped into Craig's and. For a direction that they wanted to begin with, where it was they want you to be Tim but not be Tim at the same time. Figure that out. I think it was really interesting that they kind of shifted away from that because honestly, it's great art. I mean, obviously, like I said, we all have some of your covers in our top tens. It goes without saying, I think that while it is similar, it is not exact to Tim. So I think you hit the mark with it. But yeah,
Mark hit the mark. That's just
my opinion on it.
Yeah,
Mark hit the mark.
Yes. I'll be honest. When I was a young dumb kid and I was looking at these books, I was easily fooled. I was like, I figured they were all by the same guy, and it wasn't until I got older that I figured out that you did these ones and then he did those. But it was like, honestly, for some kids, I wouldn't be surprised if they were just kind of like they were just all the same. And I mean that as a compliment, because I feel like you blended in with the Goosebumps style very well. Like, just the way that you compose those paintings fit not only Goosebumps, but really fit. It's hard for me to really explain what I mean by this, but because of the choose your own adventure aspect of this series, the art sort of had to reflect that. So, I mean, you said it yourself. The ones that Tim did were very much scene based. So, they would have Say Cheese and Die. That's the barbecue scene, and that's the scene in the book. Or it would just sort of be like a look at the monster in question, like a Slappy or a Haunted Mask. Like, it's just sort of a visual. With the Choose Your Own Adventure ones, you sort of have to have an image that sets up the general plot, but is also enticing you to like find out what's in the story and find your own path. I really like this one in particular. Again, love the colors, the purples and something about purples and pinks are really good spooky colors, and you never would guess, but they really are. But just the graveyard, the spider webs, and the green glow with the skeleton hands, like it's just, it's so, it just fits, but it's also fitting for a choose your own adventure, I personally feel.
Right. And that one was a little difficult because I think we went through, maybe like 9 drawings before they settled on one, because originally they were like, oh, we want a view of like the viewers in the pit looking up, but we also want to see part of the coffin. And I'm like, I don't know, like, okay, so you're inside the grave, but then the coffin, so you're not in the coffin, but the coffin's next to you. It's like, anyways, we went through all these sketches, and then another one was like, oh no, you're standing, on top of the pit looking down, but then the coffin's doing this. I mean, it was just like, they're all over the place. And then, finally they were just like, oh, just have it laying there with, with the skeleton hands coming out. It's like, why didn't you just tell me that from the beginning,
Yeah.
Like your versions of like Curly were coming in, like your little skull that you would hide. It was like, was that your Curly? Your version.
Who knows?
It was just my way of just kind of, being a rebel. So,
yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, you drew a drawing of Curly at some point.
Yeah. So, okay. As you were saying, those characters, Slappy, Curly, all the kind of mainline characters, I was not allowed to do those. Okay, and that's the fine. That's Tim. That's that they've got their thing going. But at one point, my agent said, "Hey, Tim doesn't have time to do this, but they want to do a bookmark for whatever, some libraries or something." And, so has Curly on it, and he needs to be sort of like in a room with, books and stuff and, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay, cool. So then, I did up the sketches and, yes. And so it even got as far, it got as far as what you were showing. Let's see if yes, I have it. I have him here.
Wow. Oh, man.
So
that's sweet.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it went all the way to a finished painting, and then I get the news, oh, no, you can't do it because, Tim does that character, and they're probably just going to use some existing art and of Tim's and put it on the.
I think I know the one as well. The one of him sitting. There's the picture of Curly sitting in the. It's on the cover of one of the calendars, isn't it? Is it the same?
Yeah, it's the 95 calendar.
Yeah, it would have been that image. I'm assuming. But that I really like your version. That's awesome.
Yeah, that one's really good.
That's big.
Hey,
another thing I really
that's really odd because the 90s were different artists. Anyways, I mean, when you look at merchandise, it wasn't Tim's art on everything. They had a separate artist doing some stuff, I'm guessing, because you could tell just by looking at Curly and Cuddles and the horror that's not Tim's art. That's clearly someone else. So I don't see why they would have done that. That's so weird. Because
it sucks that like you're brought into a series like Goosebumps that has so many iconic creatures, and you're barred from using them. Like,
well,
I don't know.
It wasn't necessarily that I was barred, but it was more like, like,
it was just like you can't.
I mean, those opportunities weren't there. But I mean, I don't. That part didn't really bother me. I mean, I just figured I'm happy enough doing Give Yourself Goosebumps, and I didn't want to rock the boat and be a prima donna and say like, "Oh, I'm out of here,"
Yeah. I mean, Craig got to do the Executioner though. In Terror Tower for Return
But he also
to Terror.
didn't do anything like Slappy or like the really popular ones, and they didn't really do any
more
until
I mean,
they got to those very later ones.
One he got to probably the most popular one he got to redo. Like Body Squeezers was like a Series 2000 book, and obviously was towards that declining time of Goosebumps. But yeah, like you don't really see much from the other artists that did Slappy or like Curly or the Haunted.
Well, I gotta say, it's just so cool to see those different interpretations of Tim's characters. So like, your art of Curly there, that's like just a really interesting like way to see how somebody else draws that character. And very recently Craig drew Slappy for the very first time, and that was interesting to see his version. So I would be interested in just seeing like how all these different artists, you and Craig, because you guys don't really get to touch those characters, but just seeing how you guys would draw them, that'd be interesting.
So I had a second opportunity, to do Curly, and this was going to be for a Goosebumps magazine cover, which, I mean, I don't know, you guys are the collectors, so I'm assuming it eventually came out.
Let's see.
So the first sketch is just
that looks
him on the beach.
That's awesome.
That looks familiar.
Okay. That looks exactly like.
I think it's hilarious that he's flexing when he's a skeleton.
Yes. So
yeah,
they didn't quite like that one as much. So then it went to a second version, which see if I can line this up.
We added a palm
tree. The dog's on the other side. And,
the dog.
He's got a drink. Coconut drink.
Bro.
He's drinking that coconut.
Okay, and then they said, "Oh, can you add some people playing volleyball in the background?" So I've got some skeletons playing volleyball in the background.
Oh, that's so cool.
Okay, and then they said, "Oh, we can't really see them, so maybe have him flexing with some friends." So they're starting to look kind of more pirate-like, but
that's what I was thinking too. With the beach and the skeleton, was like, "This is Pirates of the Caribbean right here."
Yes. And then they're like, "No, we don't want guys. Can you put two girls next to him instead that are admiring him flexing?" And that was kind of weird. I was kind of feeling a little
skeevy.
You guys talk about how he's flexing when he's all bones. Didn't mention how there's sunscreen at the bottom there.
just the fact that I had to try to balance the bikini on, the skeleton.
The skeleton.
Kind of just
hilarious.
Right. Yeah. And then finally they were like, "Okay, just go with the girls, but put them way in the back because they're kind of too creepy up front, but still skeletons." Anyways, then at this stage, after all these versions, and then they killed it. They were just like, "Oh, I think we're going to use stock art." So it never went to a finish.
Man, that's so unfair.
I want to know what Early at the beach? Like, is there a magazine? Oh, what about a scary thing?
I mean, like, I almost feel like I saw that before. Like, I had to have seen it, like, somewhere.
Like, you guys...
20 piercings, isn't there? Like, there's probably one of him at the beach or something. Like,
maybe.
I'm just trying to think of them all in my head right now, but there was a lot of scary... I'm going to say...
There was a lot.
Was there a Goosebumps magazine, though?
There was a Goosebumps magazine, and we actually talked about this in a previous episode when we talked about the Goosebumps fan clubs. But yeah, it was called the Goosebumps Scarazine, and it came with a Goosebumps Collectors Club. So basically, they used images of Curly for those covers. But
I think it was one of them. I reckon it was one of them. Because just the
Maybe.
shape of your sketch, like, it's the same. I'm going to say probably one of the scariest things. I've got heaps. Like, I almost feel like just flicking through them, going, which one could it have been?
I mean, unless they used it for other promotional material, but I don't
Probably.
recall.
I'm not even really sure. I just feel like I've seen it, seen that sketch before somewhere.
Weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, who knows?
Well, my first Goosebumps T-shirt that I ever got as a kid, like vintage, was a TikTok You're Dead. Because in Australia, they use some of your
Oh, wow.
Give Yourself Goosebumps covers on T-shirts, like in Australia, like
Oh,
licensed ones.
wow. Oh, my
And I
God.
remember I had a TikTok You're Dead, and I had a Trapped in Batwing Hall T-shirt, like vintage ones, and they still got the
Whoa.
Target tags on them.
Wow. Well, interesting. So I'm assuming you're in Australia?
Yeah.
Okay. So probably 3/4 of the way through my run, my agent sent me like a pack of fan letters, and they were almost all from Australia.
Wow.
And they were all specifically because of the Give Yourself Goosebumps. And I was like, I couldn't comprehend. Like, I don't understand why these are all from Australia. It's
We
like,
had T-shirts here.
wow. Yeah, I had.
We
I
had
had no
T-shirts,
idea.
and it's weird because like I haven't seen any other Give Yourself Goosebumps like clothing like with those images on. They always use like
Right.
Night Living Company, Haunted Mask, whatever. But then for some reason in Australia they did T-shirts at Target that featured the Give Yourself Goosebump books with
Wow.
your art.
Yeah, I was gonna
And
say I don't
remember,
recall ever seeing those here in the States.
no.
I mean, I even saw stuff that like wasn't even a book cover. Like it was like a glow in the dark shirt that had like a bat on it that I used to have that said Goosebumps, but it wasn't it wasn't like Batwing Hall or anything. It was just literally a bat. So I mean, like
I will
they had
find
shirts with nothing to do with the book covers, but that's crazy. I didn't know they had those in Australia.
I will find the shirt. I will find it. It's in my videos, like because I've done videos where I showed everything, including the T-shirts. But I will find. Surely there's gonna be one for sale somewhere.
I don't know because like when I do looking for Goosebumps stuff, I've never come across one. I mean, not to say that
Wow.
those people maybe not just ship internationally. So I mean, it could just be a scenario where I can't see it.
I'll
But
go
you
on
can.
eBay Australia and I'll see if I can quickly find a picture of it.
Oh, yeah, that would be awesome.
I'll show you. I've got them in my collection room, but they're in like tubs because I have so many Goosebumps shirts that I couldn't even have them
Yeah,
up.
you need you need like scavenging equipment to go in there and look for stuff.
So I had to literally.
It's funny because like I've been on video calls with him before and we're just chit chatting. He's going through stuff and he'll forget he even had something. He's like, I don't remember this. It's like, where did I get this?
Where did this come from?
Like,
That's the problem.
Well, okay, so we don't even need to get into it, but in terms of the character Ultraman, which is what I collect, that's how I am. I have like, garage, house, everything, bins just full of stuff, and anytime I go to Japan and I buy something, I always think, oh, I don't think I have this, and then I come back and I have like 3 of them already.
right. Yeah, no, that's him.
Oh,
There
wow.
we go. Wow.
So
Yeah.
this is in Australia right now, and it's selling for $316.
Whoa.
And it's a 1996. And then if you scroll over, you will just be able to make out the Target tag made in Australia.
Yeah.
Wow.
So they had licensed Give Yourself Goosebumps shirts in Australia,
Crazy.
and they had literally that one and Batwing
Wow.
Hall. I did them both. Because it was when I bought a lot of stuff from a market back in 2007. The lady had so much stuff, and she had a few T-shirts, and those were some of the shirts. So yeah, there you go. They were featured.
That is so cool. If you do me a favor and send me that link.
You want to buy it?
No. What? I want to at least grab the image.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if I want to spend $300.
Probably not. I wouldn't spend that kind of money.
It still has like the tongue because a lot of them kids like cut the little thing off, But this one's still on there, so that's actually, it's really cool that it's still featured. But yeah, I'll save the link.
So, getting back on track, I actually did want to ask you,
Yes.
what of the Goosebumps covers you did would you say that you're probably the most proud of, or was your favorite to work on altogether?
So my personal favorite is the one with the three wolves. I should know the name. Oh,
The
you guys
Night in Werewolf Woods. Yep.
Yes. Yes.
That's a good one. I like that one. Anything with werewolves in it.
I think at the time that sort of fit my style more. Just kind of being a little more realistic and then having the dramatic lighting on it. That one for me was a lot of fun. But I mean, yeah, there's other ones I love, like you guys are gonna nail me on this because I don't know the names of the proper names of all the covers. The comic book shop one,
Little Comic Shop of Horrors. Yep.
Yeah, that's it.
Well, I was gonna say though, because you mentioned earlier that you grew up on superheroes and drawing superheroes, so I can imagine that one was very fun for you to do.
Yeah.
That and Secret
I'd
Agent
love to
Grandma.
Secret Agent Grandma.
Oh boy.
I would love to see your rendition of your version of Attack of the Mutant then, because if you you love comic books and superheroes, villains, like I would actually love to see your version of the Masked Mutant.
Yeah,
that'd be cool.
I'm glad that Secret Agent Grandma got brought up. If I'm not mistaken, there were many different sketches for that one.
Yes, and it's interesting because you guys have sort of shown me or allowed me to see sort of the Goosebump community, and I was kind of surprised that a lot of people like that cover. And I don't want to offend anybody, but personally, I felt it was like one of my worst covers. And I think maybe it's more from a rendering standpoint than necessarily the subject matter. But it's just not one of the ones that that I cared for.
It's a goofy one, and very much so. I mean, we were talking about how Where the Purple Peanut Butter is goofy. Secret Agent Grandma. I mean, that's a goofy cover and a goofy name. It's just a goofapalooza of a book.
Was there a sketch that you preferred though, like over the one they chose, that you would have much preferred them to do?
Probably. I don't have the sketches in front of me, but I don't know if you guys have any screen grabs real quick. I
do love the roller coaster one though, that you.
Oh yeah. So that's another example of like they kind of went with sort of the more safer view, and I felt like, I felt like some of the other views I gave them would have, at least art wise, would have been more exciting for me to illustrate. And then I was always sort of internally, I was always fighting with myself, like, oh, should I make the skeletons more realistic or more cartoony? And they preferred the more cartoony. So that's usually what ended up happening. So I think in my mind, I was sort of like, I want to make these like much more dimensional and put more dramatic lighting on the skulls and stuff. But then they sort of preferred to have something a little more flat looking, if that makes any sense, of the cartoony style. So, I was a commercial artist, so I understood at the end of the day the client is who's paying for it, and that's that's what they want. So
we actually, you had actually sent us the ones for Return to Carnival of Horrors before the show, so I'll throw them up here, and we'll put the full HD versions up here for all of you guys at home to see. But here we got one sketch, and then we got two, and then this is the one that ended up getting used for the final cover.
That's actually probably one of my favorite ones, to be honest. Like, I really like that one. Was that the last one you did?
Last one was Think I Swamp, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah,
that's right, because you did do you did do one of the black. Yeah, that's right.
Yep. You had Zapped in Space, which was the first of the Black Spine ones. That was
Yes.
They did away with the holographic covers and they went on to more of a. I guess,
It was the last one in the. It was the last one in the this style though,
yes,
wasn't it? Yeah, that's what I meant. The last one.
What I call the mosaic covers. They went away with those, which is kind of unfortunate. I mean, I think the black spines look good. They look sleek, and I'm sure that's what they wanted. But I don't know. Like I said, those like mosaic type covers, man, they just screamed 90s, and they were eye catching, like on a bookshelf compared to all these other flat, baseless book covers. Then you see that it pops.
Yeah, it does.
So the foil ones are kind of more rectangular. I had to do the art in kind of a more rectangular fashion, and then I never really knew where they're going to put the little blurbs. So if you look at my compositions, I had to make sure it wasn't too cluttered, because sometimes they would end up just putting like, as seen on TV, or watch Goosebumps, or whatever. They would put these little blurbs all over it, and it would just like frustrate me, because sometimes they would have me repaint an area. They'd say, "Oh, can you fix this?" And I'd fix it, and then they'd end up putting a blurb over it, and I think like, well, why did I just do that? Like, you guys could have just covered it up, right?
Exactly. It's. I mean, that's.
I'm wondering if I wonder if they even knew that was going to be covered up.
No. No.
At that point, because I mean, why else would they? Because I mean, it makes no sense to have you fix it and then just cover it up later anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I guess after 30 years, I can be a little more critical, right? So,
yeah, I mean, there's definitely.
There's so many layers at Scholastic, and there's so many, people that are going to have their little say in the making of a book cover, that that's what would happen, right? So, whatever, art director A would see something and go, "Oh no, you got to fix this," and then we'd fix it. And then art director, he'd approve it, then it'd go on to the next guy, or, whatever. And it'd just be all these different layers. Yeah. And then in the end, whoever's the final person to give the thumbs up is the one who approves it. But yeah, there'd be stuff like that. Yeah. And then
too many layers at Scholastic. We've tried talking to them before, and the first layer of team loved the ideas we were throwing out for what we wanted to do, as far as like putting an actual like convention together to celebrate Goosebumps, because it's not been done. We had so many of our guests say they want to do this, and they were like, "Oh, that's a fantastic idea. I'm going to include my team." And then it somehow must have got moved up, because then the next person was like, "No, we ain't doing that. We're shutting all that down from you guys." We're like, "Wow, okay." So it was really strange, because you're right. There's so many layers. Yep. And I think that makes that process a little tedious, to the point where it can actually hinder good progress for a company when you have that many layers.
Yes.
In my opinion, of course.
Well, welcome to the corporate world.
Yes.
So I did want to just bring out Zapped in Space as just an example of the new style. But you did do the first two, Zapped in Space, and then Lost in Stink Eye Swamp. But I've seen you do pictures with this particular one. This one I really like. I just kind of like the glowing backlight on the aliens and just the two-headed creature.
Yeah. Let's see. Give me a second, and I will see if I can grab that one. So when we got to that point, I already knew that my days on the series were kind of tenuous, to say the least. And as we sort of talked about earlier, a thing called Photoshop was making its way through lots of artists, and especially people like me who are doing an airbrush style, which is kind of, more slick looking. Early Photoshop killed a lot of airbrush artists' careers, because it could just be done very, very quickly, efficiently on the computer, and then that could be emailed, and there's no art to get lost, and If you needed to make changes, theoretically the changes would be faster. Although I will say I did try to transition to Photoshop and I hated it. It's just not what I do. And I could, in terms of changes, like I could change it just as fast, if not faster, traditionally. But that's still not what they wanted. Anyways, when we got into the Zapped in Space, the format changed from sort of going rectangular this way, left and right, and then now it was more vertical. So it's kind of big, so I'll come back a little. But
wow.
That was...
Look at that.
That's the painting.
Yeah,
so
I love the backlight from the spaceship on the aliens and the elongated shadow.
Yeah, they also ended up cropping into it. So, I had to make sure there's plenty of room all around it, and I didn't know how they were going to crop it.
Yeah. I mean, I guess in terms of this book, it ended up not being that bad.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I feel like the reproduction kind of lost a little bit. It kind of flattened out a little. I don't know if it's just, in the painting or whatever. But again, it's another case of, I'll see if I can find the sketches for that. I kind of felt like they picked a sketch that was not, sort of not the one I would have chosen in terms of layout and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I actually had other, I'll see if I can find them real quick, but I had other versions that were kind of more alien-like, and yeah, they didn't, for whatever reason, they didn't want to go down that route.
You pick the one that you don't want. Why is that?
I'll see if I can find those other sketches and maybe email those to you guys later. But
yeah.
Well, one thing I can do right quick is I was able to find the sketches for Secret Agent Grandma.
Cool.
So there's one of them, and then there's another. There's the one that's pretty similar to what would be used in the final. Yep. And then we have this one that's a lot more of a bird's eye view.
Yeah. So, yeah, like something like that for me would have been more dynamic. I think it would have made for, more of a kind of in-your-face cover.
Yeah.
So I feel like whenever they picked a safe choice, they always kind of pulled the scene back. So it's almost like you're standing across the street and looking at it, and it's sort of, to me, is not as exciting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. It needs to just be engaging. It needs to be almost three-dimensional.
I mean, yeah. Personally, right. I think it's more exciting that way. But
Mm-hmm. No, I agree.
They must have, I want to say, given that direction even to Tim later, because if you look at a lot of the Series 2000 books, they're all like that. Almost all of them are like that. Attack of the Graveyard Ghouls is a prime example. Headless Halloween. He really at that point, was more engaged in having that kind of interaction right in your face, kind of art.
His nightmare is literally just like the longest jaw, as you say, Nick, on any artwork.
I'll be the first to say it. I don't mind. I do not like that cover that Tim did. It is terrible in my opinion.
Maybe that one needed to be more of an across the street look.
Way far away. Where to the point where you can't even make out that that's Slappy at that point.
It could have been cool if it was literally just like you see the whole bed with him like this. That could have been, maybe it was too close up.
Speaking of which,
it's a little too close up. It's like he had this whole canvas, and instead of just like putting Slappy's head in his body, he just made it the entire head. And it's like, oh geez, okay, well that's a little much. I mean, when you look at like some of the that's the thing. Like, I guess when you get to work on the same character for multiple book covers,
Yeah.
like he did. I don't know if that's something you ever got to experience, Mark, getting to redo the same character on different books or anything, but he changed the style every time along the way to where
Right.
you can't even recognize anymore by the time you get to Slappy's Nightmare that was the same one that Tim did way back for the first Night Living Dummy book. It's like,
Right. Well, I mean, I think artistically there's an evolution, and also it could be a time constraint as well, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah, we won't know. Now, I will say it's funny because like we've had Tim on a few times, and I don't mean to talk about him on your time here for sure.
No worries.
I just love to compare like all the Goosebumps artists together. Because it's so interesting, all your different styles and hearing all your different stories and how sometimes they even line up with each other. Like it's funny to see like how Scholastic just like was so go. We need this. Bring it to us now. But then they'll be like, oh no, we're going to change this. We're going to cover this up, as we've been talking about. So, with that, it's kind of like, what do you do though at that point? You know what I mean?
It's again, I hate to harp on the whole corporate world thing, but I mean, I was just taking my cues from my agent, and he would say, go, stop, no, do sketch B, no, they changed their mind, do C, it's just like, like, okay, what am I doing? Which one am I working on? And then again, just within my own schedule, I'm doing Graveyard School, I'm doing, some other corporate thing on, some other project. So literally I had like a paper on the wall with like, all the projects and, when to build them, when they're supposed to be done, and, just like constantly checking things off. So I think I couldn't really dwell on it too long. It was sort of like, okay, they're not ready to go. I'm fine. I'm going to move on to this other project because I need to paint this other thing. And when you're kind of in the thick of it, you're not, it's okay.
Yeah, it's a time management thing for sure.
Right.
And
I think
that's where we
years,
get to like Secret Agent Grandma. And I know like I said, just to close out that thought with Tim was he wanted us to do an episode with him in the future where it's our top 10 least favorite ones of his artwork.
Wow.
So, that's what made me think of like Secret Agent Grandma. It's like, you're like, that's, it's funny how people love that one, but it's like one of your probably least favorite ones. And so that kind of got me thinking. I was like, maybe we'll have to do one of yours, but not just Goosebumps. We can go outside of that. We can attach in Graveyard School or anything else.
they're all
interesting to see.
They're all my babies. I don't know.
It's like trying to choose your children.
Exactly. That's why I kind of thought about it. I was like, that's why I thought it was funny. Tim was like, no, I want to do an episode where it's our 10 least favorite ones I've done. Like, that's weird, but okay.
Well, at least he's honest.
Yeah. Graveyard School was great, by the way. Like, I had so many of those. Like, I love the Graveyard School. I think, who was it? Isaiah, someone
they're good
was their
covers.
favorite book series.
Wasn't it?
One of the.
God, I don't remember. It's one of our
but,
friends in the Goosebumps crew.
Oh, that's funny.
But
gosh.
it is funny because it's a series that doesn't have like it's obviously not as nearly as popular as Goosebumps. Yet I find out more and more that these like sort of I guess sort of rip off, sort of copycat Goosebumps series have actually some fan bases of their own, and Graveyard School is one of them.
Yeah,
but it's also interesting.
Was it Library Macabre?
I think it was Library Macabre. It was somebody that we've had on the podcast before.
So Cameron Chaney writes, and did he do the artwork for the cover too for the Autumn Crow series?
I don't remember, maybe.
But I think he's the one who he absolutely loves the Graveyard School covers, and that Graveyard School and Goosebumps inspired him to do his own book called I think it's called the Autumn Crow.
Oh, cool! Wow.
and I can see where the art style is kind of similar to the Graveyard School and Goosebumps era.
Yeah.
So I don't know if he did it himself or he got someone else to do it, but maybe we can show you that here. Maybe I can send you something. But it's interesting though, the influence that you guys have had on future generations of artists that maybe you guys didn't realize you did.
Oh yeah, of course not.
And going off of that, I actually wanted to bring attention to this cover because Fifi the vampire dog has actually been used quite a bit in recent Goosebumps media. Appeared in the Goosebumps movie with Jack Black, and also the recent television reboot on Disney Plus. And it was the only Give Yourself Goosebumps cover to be redone for a modern reprint. So Please Don't Feed the Vampire got a modern reimagination of this cover. The only one of the whole series.
And you do see that the jars in the back, that the word sugar is misspelled.
Oh, is it? Oh my gosh, you're right. Hold on, I'm gonna see if I can get in on that. It's spelled SUGER instead of AR.
Yeah,
I never noticed that.
Totally on me, and yet it went through all the levels of scholastic approvals and nobody caught it.
That's kind of gold when you think about a book company misspelling, not catching a spelling error on a hardcover.
It's crazy.
That's pretty good.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. I just wonder how many people who will watch this knew that, because I don't think anybody has ever brought that up.
I'm very curious to know. Maybe some hardcore
any of the groups, any of the chats, nothing. Like nobody.
Maybe some hardcore fan figured that out, but like I didn't know that up until this point. So who knows?
Going on the Goosebumps wiki.
Yeah, it's kind of an embarrassing thing, but
they spell like Tyrannosaurus wrong in Jurassic Park. When he's pulling out the little tubes of the dinosaur DNA, one of them was spelt wrong.
Oh wow!
Like clearly spelt wrong. It was like the top 10 movie mistakes of all time, and like that was one of them. Like,
one thing I do like about these covers, especially yours, is just sort of scanning to find all the little details, all the little Easter eggs. Even sometimes, like you do a similar thing to Tim Jacobus, where you write your name in the art, and I'm probably not the only one who did this. Always made it a game to search the art to find the signature on it.
Right, yeah. Right. Well, my agent was, again, I have to credit him for letting me sign them in places that would show up on the book. I think early on they were sort of downplaying that this was not Tim doing the covers, but as I was getting into the series, I think they kind of loosened up, which was fine. So that's cool. Mm-hmm. Real quick, here's some sketches of the peanut butter one that it started off.
That one's
makes
cool.
me think of Carly Beth biting into the sandwich.
yeah, with the worms and whatnot.
And then the more generic version where the kids just
oh my god, sandwich. I love it.
Let's see, and then then there's another version where they're really stuck on having the kid, but this time he's kind of walking.
I like that there's a bite taken out of it too. It's actually kind of creepy. It is kind of creepy, actually. You're right.
And then same thing, just different angle. Sometimes they would just say, let's just have them coming like more towards us.
I love that.
Let's see. And then this one's just sort of a variation of the final one where he's got a little less goop and he's kind of he's not looking at us.
I like that.
Yeah.
He's just...
I did like that your art also
I'm just curious. You said earlier you had a budget to hire like an actor or whatever to do a model of. Did you have someone to do this too? For that one?
I'm trying to think.
I'm just curious if like you got some like twin mattresses and this like smushed him in there. It's like, hey, just deal with it, okay?
I think ultimately I might have used outtakes from another shoot for like the basic shape of the kid's head.
Mm-hmm.
But the rest of it was just made up. So
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah. So I didn't take an actual sandwich or build an actual sandwich and you know,
That'd be funny though.
photograph it or
Get a couple,
whatever.
like I say, just a couple mattresses. That's a story you're going to remember if you did something like that. So I was curious.
Go the extra mile and just put a bunch of goop all over it.
Yeah, let's see. That was 30 years ago. I better go make sure that kid's got out of the mattresses, right?
Yeah. It's just a skeleton.
right.
Just, yeah.
I did want to ask. So,
Yeah.
you know, Craig White began with Shop Till You Drop Dead, but you actually made sketches for that book. What was the process like? Did they just tell you that he was going to be taking over, or like how? Hopefully, it's not a touchy subject, but I am curious to know.
Well, so the irony of it is actually my agent was repping him as well. So my agent was fine with it, right?
Right, I'm sure.
But again, I knew sort of the writing was on the wall when I knew they wanted a different look. And they wanted that look to be computer looking. Mm-hmm. So no matter how well I was airbrushing, it didn't matter. I wasn't doing it on the computer. So it just didn't have that look. After Stink Eye Swamp, and actually they really liked that artwork, but they were just kind of like, well, we're shifting, you know, directions, and it's, you know, we're going to go with Craig. And I was like, okay, that, you know, that's fine. You know, it's like, I've had a good run. But I did, so I guess I'm trying to think, you know, 30 years ago. I think they told me right after I had finished the sketches of the mannequins, like on the escalators and stuff. So that's why I generated those sketches, because as far as I knew, I was going to at least do that one or take that to the finish. But then midway through, they, you know, that was it.
Yeah.
I got laid off.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes that's just the way it is. But,
Yeah.
you know, as long as you have a good run, and that's the most important thing.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think one thing, again, when I look back on all the different phases that I've gone through with my art career, is that at this point, I was so burnt out of doing commercial art after about 11 or 12 years, and then just this pace of taking on every single... So I'm freelance, right? So I'm not employed by any, you know, company. So, of course, I never turned down a job because I never knew if it was going to be a slow month or, you know, or not a slow month. But I was just like, oh, can you do this airbrush thing? Yes, I'll do it. You know, can you do this cover? Yes, I'll do it. You know, my agent would say, well, but you're already doing 3 covers. I was like, no, I'll do the 4th one. Like, I don't care. You know, like you know, I'm making money. I don't know if you're not going to call next month. But literally after 12 years of doing that, like I said, I developed an ulcer. I was just kind of like so burnt out that in a way, even though Photoshop sort of killed my career, in a way it sort of saved me in terms of my health.
Yeah.
Because it made me kind of step back and reassess, like, you know, okay, what am I doing, you know, with my art? Do I want to go digital? Okay, so if I'm not going to go digital, what am I going to do? And it's sort of at that point, and, you know, I can speed through this part of it, but to that point, I was collecting Japanese toys just as a hobby, you know, on just that's what I liked. And I thought, oh, it'd be really cool to do like a magazine that shows these really cool, amazing toys, vintage toys from the 70s and 60s, and kind of explain it, but in English, you know, not in a Japanese kind of publication. So that's when I got together with a couple of friends and we started a magazine called Super 7. And so from my freelance career, I transitioned to being like a magazine publisher. And the one cool thing about that, since I co-owned the magazine, was I could still do artwork within the magazine. So I was doing, Ultraman airbrush illustrations and, whatever Godzilla, and could still publish it, right? Because it's our own magazine. So that was sort of my transition away from the commercial art field to just doing sort of more my own thing and creating my own product, so to speak. And then after about 4 or 5 years of that, then that transitioned to getting toy factory connections. And it was like, oh, you can actually make your own toys, or you can get the licenses to make some of these Japanese toys. And that's what led to Max Toy Company, which is named after my son, Max. That's why it's called Max Toy Company. And that's what I've been doing for the last 20 years.
Mm-hmm. And it's a great, I mean, to go from art to toy making, and as you said, you grew up with, collecting Japanese toys, and then you get to make some of your own. I can imagine is just not only surreal, but just an amazing experience and just a thing to do for your job. I would
and better for your health.
Better for your health. Definitely. Yeah, so
after 20 years, I'm kind of like thinking, I don't know, I'll try to do this for maybe another 4 or 5 years, but once I hit 65, I think I'm gonna retire from the toy world and go back to art and just do stuff that I want to do, if that makes sense. So
just be like, is it too late to go back?
Yeah, I mean, I think, and I tell my son this too. I mean, of course, you want to do something for as long as you can do it, but there's also a point where it's good to just sort of change the trajectory of what you're doing, and that'll make it more exciting, hopefully. So, I mean, right now I still do a little art for the toy company, like for the packaging and stuff. Real quick, I can show you. We put out we licensed this character, which is Ultraman, and so for the packaging art, I was able to do the main character, and then he's got some kaiju in the background.
That's cool.
It's really cool.
I love Ultraman. I've got a friend one of my Japanese friends, he is a huge fan of that, and he collects all sorts of merch, toys, and from Ultraman. So
as you can see behind me.
I was gonna say you have some competition.
It's everywhere.
No, I love it. I love. I'm telling Nick all this time. Like, I'm a huge fan of Japanese horror. So I probably the biggest. There isn't even much merch of it, but probably the biggest Ju-on, the Grudge collection, I think. They have all the little promotional things they brought out, like little plushes and stuff. So, yeah, no, I love that. Ringu, I love that.
Just Japanese stuff in general we talk about all the time, because like their horror is great. Obviously, everybody knows Godzilla and the kaiju. Growing up for me, like I love Jet Jaguar. So I mean, and obviously, like as I got older and found out from Power Rangers, there was it came from Japan, and of course you never knew that growing up. But finding out about Jew Ranger and all their other Sentais, and just the whole lore of movie and television stuff they have over there is phenomenal.
Well, and don't forget, if it weren't for
far and away better than a lot of stuff here that still gets made.
Don't forget, if it weren't for Japan,
70s and 80s.
Nintendo, a Japanese company, we probably would not have, the sort of video game market we have today. So it's like Japan had a stranglehold on a lot of different media back then, and technically still now. So not at all surprised that there's such huge fan bases for Japanese media like that. Not at all.
I mean, a lot of the stuff that's big in the States is because of stuff from Japan. So, I mean, that's not really surprising. I mean, even when you think of Transformers, you know, you probably think that's an completely American made thing, but to find out it's really not. It came from a line of toys that I believe was in Japan. And then somebody had the idea to make a show out of. So, and like I said, Power Rangers, another prime example, things like that. So, I mean, I mean, Jet Jaguar, Godzilla, Ultraman,
Pokemon,
good stuff. Pokemon, yeah. Pocket Monster.
I mean, anime in general, but that's a whole other.
So many good stuff. I could talk about Japanese stuff for hours.
I thought this was a Goosebumps channel.
Yeah, no, this. No, but I actually do have.
I do have a Japanese Goosebumps book. I mean,
I got one. Yeah, I got one too.
To be fair.
Yeah. I do want to ask two more questions relating to Goosebumps. The first of which being, you've done, toy making for the last 20 years. So, and obviously it's been quite a while since the last Goosebumps cover you did, but has that era of your career, held any inspiration over currently what you do now? Do you still take any, any of the experiences that you had from that time period into now?
I think for me, it trained me to paint very quickly and to conceptualize like literally within minutes. So for that, it was really good, really good training. So now if I need to come up with some kind of artwork or something, I can pretty much whip it up in, like a day or so. And also to not be so precious with the art because, you only had a certain amount of time to work on something and then you just have to ship it off. I had a friend during that same time period who was vastly superior to me in terms of artistic talent. But, no offense to him, but he would noodle something for days and then I'd look at it and I wouldn't even know what he was doing on it, but he was just like, oh no, I had to fix it, like that area there. And I'm like, it looks great, you should send it. And he would miss deadlines because, colors were not quite what he wanted or something. And I appreciated that he was very on point about that kind of stuff. But then on the other hand, in the commercial world, I mean, it's sort of like you got to hit your deadline and you got to get something done. And it may not be a masterpiece, but if they're happy with it, then hey, we're done, right? Let's get to the next one.
Definitely. And I think this goes without saying, do you hold a fondness for your time on Goosebumps and the work that you've done for it?
I think I appreciate it now more than I did when I was in it. And primarily because when I started doing it, I was 31 already, and like literally a couple years away from having my son, and again, I knew it was a phenomenon. I mean, I could, it was in the bookstores, and occasionally I would see little news clips like, oh, R.L. Stein's going to sign here, and he got mobbed, but it was always sort of, again, maybe since I wasn't on the East Coast as well, it always felt very removed for me. And I would see my covers in wherever, Barnes and Noble or whatever. But again, it felt a little surreal. And I was always occupied with other projects that were going on as well. So part of me feels like if I could go back in time, I would have collected more things, and yeah, I just sort of appreciated more the mania that was going on. But I think I was just so wrapped up in meeting the deadlines and whatnot, and just then it was over.
Yeah.
Then I moved on to the next thing. So yeah.
As we always talk about it, you never know like what is going to become the next big thing. Sometimes we've talked about this a multitude of times with the many guests we've talked to on the show, And yeah, exactly. And it's just like, many people come onto it as a job. Like at the time, that's just all it is. But then all these years later, there's hundreds of thousands of fans who look back on these books with such, like admiration and dedication in their hearts, like we have.
Yes.
And it's just kind of like I can imagine it's a very surreal experience. Just be like, wow, I can't believe that. I can't believe that something like this would have become so big. So it's always interesting to just hear about how those experiences evolve over time.
Right. Well, and the fact that like Bjorn was saying, in Australia was this huge thing, and had no idea that any of that was happening.
Yeah, the art was actually featured like on original. I'm sure there was probably like promotional posters or something as well when those books were coming out, because like every series had some kind of a promotional like poster or whatever it might have been. So I'm sure there was stuff going around too. I guess my last question is: so do you think we'll ever get a figurine or a toy of Secret Agent Grandma?
Did I see on one of your Facebook pages that somebody had made a little sculpt of it?
I think somebody had. So I've seen some people make like 3D sculptures or even figurines of the Goosebumps, characters, and I did see one of Secret Agent Grandma. I'll have to find it again, and if I can find it, I'll send it to you.
Yes.
But no, I've seen quite a. I think I saw one for like TikTok You're Dead. I think I saw.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I think I even saw one for Dr. Eek. I think something like that. So definitely, and I'll see if I can find it. But I'm almost positive there has been something like that.
I have a funny, real quick thing if I can add about Dr. Eek. So the test tubes that are on the table that are like by his feet, and then there's like a little rack of test tubes. I don't know. Is this kind of a kids show, or maybe not?
Yeah.
I'll be sensitive in my description, but they kept telling me like, don't make them look like condoms. Like, just, like make sure, the liquid is blah, blah, blah. And, I won't get into those details. But anyways, it was, I was just like, what are you guys talking about? It's like they're test tubes.
Oh my God. That's incredible.
It's like they're shaped like that, right? I don't.
Yeah, it's just like what they look like.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my God.
Oh my God.
Like, maybe they just didn't want like a Disney thing, because back in the 90s, Disney artists were sneaking in penises or whatever else, into the artwork. So, they were like, hey, no condom.
Oh, that little
on this cover.
Chest tape.
Yeah. Well, that's the one I was referring to. That's the most well-known one, but I know there was other ones too that they did. So,
well, and there's other, arts that we didn't really get to talk about today, just for the sake of time. One I will bring up really quick is Deep in the Jungle of Doom.
Yes.
I love this one. If Beware the Purple Peanut Butter was one of the first I ever saw, this is actually one of the first I ever read. I remember seeing this in a school library, and I was just like, you know what? I gotta read this, and I think I went through like at least 10 of the endings, and I was just like, all right, you've sold me. But I'll never forget this like fish man coming out of the water.
Yes, that is in my top 5 of like what really fit my groove and my style, and definitely like a Creature from the Black Lagoon vibe. So yeah.
Definitely,
for sure.
But so many good ones: Screaming Evil Genie, the Wicked Wax Museum, Keep the Island, Toy Terror, Beastly Babysitter. Like just a bunch of really, really good ones.
I didn't like the Beastly Babysitter. So
really, why didn't you like it?
I didn't understand, like, why is this giant rat ringing the doorbell? Like, it just, I just sat there thinking like, oh, I don't know, what am I supposed to do with that?
Mm-hmm.
So
That would have been.
I think was a rat wearing like a skirt or something,
movie.
or
Yeah, it was like it's kind of like just your typical like dress that like
right.
sort of a nanny would wear, but it's this enormous rat, and then you got like the kid peeking through the blanket.
Movie, how freaky that would have been, like that giant.
I was just gonna say it just kind of looks like Master Splinter's grandma or something. Like
that would have been terrifying.
And I cannot go without mentioning this one, Knight in Screaming Armor.
Yeah,
that's my favorite.
This is a great one. This one, I love the moon. Just the moon is just such a great image, and just I also like the little bird with the the knight helmet on.
So that was
made me think more of like oh my gosh, like the Clash of the Titans.
Yeah,
the old Clash of the Titans.
Bilbo, the owl. Yeah. So the bird was a last minute addition. So I had finished the painting and I sent it to them. They're like, yeah, great. And then also a couple days later, they're like, okay, it's coming back to you because we want you to add like a bird. I was just like, where?
Anyway.
So circled the little area, and then I had to do a separate sketch for the bird and stick them in, paint them in. So
wow.
I just like that it is just like a bird night. Just
right.
Like, all right, if I'm gonna draw a bird, I'm gonna draw a weird bird.
Yeah,
but,
I can't take credit for that. They specifically told me to make him look like he's wearing armor and all that kind of stuff. So
definitely. So many good ones that we didn't even get a chance to like really delve into, which is just another reason we'll have to probably do this again sometime and bring you on to talk more about it.
Yeah, for sure.
But I guess one final thing before we wrap things up for the night, to all the Goosebumps fans who are watching this, what do you have to say to like just all the fans out there who grew up with these books and by an extension your artwork?
Yeah, no, I'm so excited that there's like a community out there for these books and especially for the artists. I mean, I think, like a lot of things, no offense to R.L. Stein, but I feel like parallel to that in the comic book world is like, of course, Stan Lee gets all the accolades and glory, but to me, the artists are sort of the hard-working guys, that are putting the actual images forward, like a Jack Kirby or Steve Ditko, all the original guys. And so, I'm so happy to see that, like Tim Jacobus and Craig, that everybody's getting at least a little recognition for what they've contributed to the brand. So it's very cool. Yeah, I mean, you guys are very positive about it too. So
like R.L. Stein wrote the stories, but I always say this: you guys are the ones that give life to the characters. You literally bring them.
It's the hook. It's the hook to reel the kids, the readers in.
We've said it on here before, and I'll 100% back it. I mean, we've said it to Tim, but he's like swears there's like, oh no, it's dying. I'm like, no. I was like, I didn't pick up a Goosebumps book because I read it first. I picked up the Goosebumps book because I saw the Haunted Mask and the art drew me in.
Yep.
I was like, and then I read the book.
Yeah.
There's even books like I haven't read that I just bought because the cover looked amazing. The art looks good.
Yes. I knew people that used to buy Goosebumps books, didn't even read them. They just wanted to collect them because they looked collectible. They just were like, oh,
I might be guilty of that.
So
I was at the beginning.
I wholeheartedly agree with you on that one, Mark. It is, to me, the artist, and that's why we do these artist series to highlight.
Yep, definitely.
People who did that.
Thank you guys. Yeah. Good thing I signed the covers.
Yeah.
Yes.
Then we know. Then now we know who's to blame, and we'll have to remedy that situation of you not meeting Tim or Craig. We'll have to make sure that happens. So
we'll have to do like a all three of you or something. That'd be cool.
That'd be awesome.
It would be like a battle royale.
Yeah, who could draw the best covers?
But if you guys have me on again, I know we're running out of time, but I do have an Animorph story as well, so I'll save that.
Dang.
I'll save that for next time.
Oh yeah, next time we're going to talk about that, because I know some people who are dying would be dying to hear some Animorph stuff.
Yes, I was hired to do the first cover, which
really
obviously went to a computer artist.
Yeah, well,
those damn computers are going to take our jobs.
I swear, like, the Animals books are so iconic, but I see people just make fun of the covers now because they're like the mid-morph.
Well, they're always inherently
so funny. Like, it's like the mid-morph character just looks so hilarious.
Yeah, like a potato with eyes or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But
for that era, I mean, the guy, I know or I don't know the guy, but I know of the guy who was doing the covers. I mean, that was like a, combination of off-the-shelf software, and that's, that's the look.
Just how it is.
They're unique.
But that's art for you. But with all that said, we're going to go ahead and end off this episode of Goosebumps Crew here. Super, super special thanks to you, Mr. Mark Nagata, for joining us tonight and talking some Goosebumps with us. We really appreciate your time and talking with us.
Cool. Thank you, guys. Yeah.
Absolutely. And for our audience at home, is there any social media websites that our audience can find yet?
Sure. I don't update my art site, but you can go to marknagata.com if you want to just see some of my past illustrations. Currently, I sell and make Japanese-inspired toys, kaiju, and you can go to maxtoyco.com. That's maxtoyco.com.
Okay, and I will make sure to leave links to all those in the description below, and where you can find Mark over on Instagram and Twitter, so make sure you give him a follow. And as always, of course, make sure you follow Bjorn and Nick at Goosebumps, Oxyfan, and Sean, respectively. If you like today's episode, make sure you leave a like and comment. Subscribe to us on YouTube. Follow us on our audio platforms and our social medias. All those links are in the description below, so check them out. We'll have another episode for you guys next week. But until then, this has been the Goosebumps Crew Podcast. And from all of us here, I want to wish you all, as always, to take care, stay safe, and have a very scary day.